And the category is Best Progressive-Looking Political Stunt in an Election Year. And the Oscar goes to... Montreal Mayor Denis Coderre. It's time for another podcast. Not quite live from Forget the Box Studios in Montreal. This is the FTB Podcast, the only podcast you're listening to right now. And welcome to the FTB Podcast for Sunday, February 26th, Oscar night. Now, we're not recording this on Sunday. We're recording this Tuesday, February 21st, here in Montreal, just in case something happens between now and Sunday. I'm your host, Jason C. McLean, and let's meet our panel.
Oh, that's me. My name is Ellana Blacher. I am a McGill graduate and very involved in the local arts scene in Montreal.
David, law student, blogger, and fairly activisty, I think you could say.
Activisty, that's a very Hollywood expression.
Oh.
And we're going to be going Hollywood in a bit, talking about the Academy Awards. You got your popcorn ready? We're going to be, yes, a bunch of political pundits are going to be talking about Hollywood. But before we get into that, Montreal, where we're recording this, is now a sanctuary city. For more on what that means, here's Hannah Besseau.
Montreal is now officially a sanctuary city. On Monday, City Council voted unanimously in favor of a motion offering municipal services such as public housing to undocumented workers without the risk of deportation or detainment. The motion put forward by Mayor Denis Coderre calls for a plan to help people in vulnerable situations receive police assistance without being reported to immigration officials. The city is also calling on the Quebec government to provide health services for unauthorized migrants and the federal government to normalize their status. Coderre claims the move is more than symbolic, and Solidarity Across Borders hopes that is indeed the case. The human rights organization points to the Montreal police practice of arresting undocumented migrants and handing them over to the Canadian Border Service Agency. While the Montreal-based group welcomes the city's motion, which started with a tweet by Mayor Denis Coderre responding to U.S. President Donald Trump's travel ban, they hope it goes beyond this easy symbolism.
I think easy symbolism is where it's at. I think this is absolutely performative liberalism. It's great in an election year to say, oh yeah, we're absolutely going to be great to the immigrants, we're going to be great to the migrants. Montreal is a sanctuary city, but my experience in the city is very different. It does not seem to be very fond of outsiders.
Well, in general, there is a very xenophobic through line in Quebec in particular. I think Montreal is a lot better. I mean, yes, there are mosques that get vandalized, synagogues get vandalized here. A lot of horrible things happen, but there is a very progressive vibe in the city too.
Yet, Outremont just voted to not allow to have any more synagogues built. If you take a trip through Milo right now, you'll see graffitied swastikas. My own experience at traffic court in Quebec, in lowest level traffic court, completely up to the discretion of the officers, brought me into a room with the highest percentage of black people I've ever seen in Montreal. I got out of that ticket for being white, and it's also hard enough to get a job in the city if you don't speak French.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I would just say, if we could get back to the sanctuary city status, I'm going to give them some credit, maybe unfairly, but I'm going to say that they mean well with this. Let's remember, it's not just Coderre doing some publicity stunt. It's the whole council, including the opposition. Now, a lot of people, including Projet Montréal, brought up the fact that this doesn't really go that far, and that it's not a big commitment for the government to make. The resources that are being used mostly for housing and other immigration-related issues are being provided provincially or maybe federally. They're not really coming from the municipal level, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the housing, at least low-cost housing, I believe municipal definitely has a big part in that. And when it comes to police, too, that's the thing. I think that the thing is to get the police not to necessarily turn these people over to immigration. I mean, I think it's a good thing, but there is also definitely a publicity angle to this, and the fact that it is an election year. But I'm wondering what the city could do to make it more concrete, to make it actually more of a truth. Would they have to also put stuff in place to prevent locals from being racist or attacking minority communities?
I feel like it's pretty well known among the people that I know, at least, that the best way to deal with police in Montreal is to be white and speak French.
Yeah, it's.
But the idea of the resources and especially the housing issue, you're right. Municipal governments provide some support for housing, but I mean, ultimately that's provincial government. If the provincial government cuts the housing budget in half, which is what this provincial government did last year, then there's going to be less social housing in Montreal, whether the city is a sanctuary city or not. And furthermore, according to a Ryerson University study in Toronto, which became a sanctuary city in 2013, the city lacked the funding and the political leadership to follow through on their commitments. So that kind of reinforces what you're saying, Ellana, which is this is more of a, a statement or an empty kind of promise.
I guess it's nice that they're at least making a statement that seems progressive. I mean, maybe that's giving them too much credit because I think they also know that's what the populace wants to hear. Mm-hmm. But at least it's nice to know that they're at least publicly saying something to the degree that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. He made this. Well, this started, as we heard in the report, from a tweet that the mayor sent in response as a reply to a tweet from Donald Trump on the immigration ban, saying just know that Montreal is going to be a sanctuary city, welcoming all. In terms of public reaction, the one thing that I'm going by is some of these comments on stories on websites about the sanctuary city. It's all these people talking about, this costs way too much. What are they doing? These people, they're going to bring us Sharia law and stuff like that. Typical far right commentaries in response to this purely this potentially just symbolic, potentially going somewhere motion.
Well, Jason, I think that actually brings up a really important point that I think we in Canada have a bit of a tendency to kind of say, we're super liberal, we're super progressive, and we completely talk over the significant portions of the population that we have that do not think like that and do not share those ideals. Yet we just kind of parade on this idea of being, more progressive in the United States.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it kind of relates to the Justin Trudeau effect, which is Justin Trudeau will go out and publicly say, refugees, come here, you're welcome here. And then privately, the government won't raise the quotas for refugees in Canada.
And he'll go shake hands with Donald Trump and take a photo up with Ivanka.
Exactly. And they won't repeal a bilateral treaty with the United States, which forces us to return refugee claimants to the United States.
The third party, the
Safe Third Country Act.
That's the problem. That's because that's why these people are sneaking. People who, by the way, a lot of these refugees, they were vetted like crazy to get their spot in the United States. Like they spent 2 years being vetted to get in. They finally get into the United States, and then this proto-fascist comes in as president, and they're like, "Oh wow, I don't feel safe anymore." So they decide to flee across the border to Canada. The reason they're running across the border and not just coming in through the border and saying I'm fleeing Donald Trump is because of this agreement, because of the safe third country status. The fact that you cannot be a refugee, you can't claim to be a refugee from the United States, even though the current administration in the United States is not something that they
and their rights will be violated
openly hostile
in the U.S.
towards,
I mean, they won't even be considered. They will be deported automatically if they're from one of those 7 countries in the United States, which is a violation of international law and arguably U.S. law.
Yeah. Now, for example, New York City is also declared itself a sanctuary city. But I think in the States,
that means more. Right?
In the States, it means more because they're actively not cooperating with ICE. And the federal government's threatening to withdraw funding to cities that declare themselves sanctuary cities, and they're saying, "Fine, but you're not getting our taxes." Like it's actually like a war between the municipal government and the federal government. That actually does mean something.
I think that goes to show you that Canada, we're a little two-faced. We have a little bit of a we politically posture this kind of performative liberalism, and we're not doing that much behind the scenes. Yeah, well,
Justin Trudeau, the selfie prime minister who, he said the perfect when he was speaking to Trump. He's like they mentioned the difference between the reporter brought up their differences dealing with refugees, like Trump's travel ban versus Trudeau welcoming refugees.
Syrians.
Trump dodged it only like Donald Trump can, not even like a politician. He's talked something about his electoral college victory. It made no sense whatsoever.
He's like a rambling drunk.
He sounded like a rambling drunk. Trudeau, on the other hand, said, yes, we have Canada that believes this, the States believe that, but Canadians don't expect me to come down and lecture another country. Now, he wouldn't be lecturing another country because a lot of the people in that country aren't. He'd just be lecturing Donald Trump, which I think is sort of
the Safe Third Country Act is our law. It's not about changing U.S. law.
Yeah.
It's about changing our laws. So I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
You can change Canadian laws without offending the United States.
Yeah,
I would hope.
At the same point too, like in terms of like the government of Montreal, what can the city of Montreal do? Like beyond this thing. Like is there besides for symbolic moves like this, is there anything the city of Montreal could actually do to help fight Trump? But they have to start fighting Trudeau first.
Well, maybe it kind of starts closer to the ground. Maybe if you could, I don't know, make just a cultural appreciation class for police officers or something to kind of just expose them to maybe other cultures a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's part of it, I think.
And basically, maybe, well, at least there are a lot of people in Montreal, and some elected politicians too. For example, Craig Sauvé with Projet Montréal.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a mosque vandalized or a synagogue vandalized, they're the first one there. They're on the scene. They're taking pictures. They're saying, "We do not stand with this. This is not our community."
Or the bylaw in Outremont, actually, where I live.
Yeah.
Because they, Mindy Polak, an elected councillor on the Outremont borough, she held a sort of candlelight vigil a protest against the bylaw that prevented any sort of new places of worship, i.e. new synagogues.
Didn't they pass that bylaw on a day that she couldn't actually attend because she's a Hasidic Jew? Like there was a day, it was a religious high holiday or something like that. And that's the day they actually passed that bylaw because she was opposed to it.
That's dirty.
That's shady.
Yeah, that's the Outremont City Council. Well, Montreal, one thing about Montreal is we are a shady city. Like, that's one thing you cannot deny.
Yeah.
And this is an election year.
Take that, Toronto.
But at least I prefer this. I mean, I prefer being a sanctuary city over those granite tree stumps on the mountain. Or like you heard about those $2 million for fake granite tree stumps on the mountain?
No.
I was on the mountain this weekend.
I
Where
did not.
are those? I can't even find them.
Why would we do that?
Because I guess Denis Coderre wanted to give someone
It's
$2
part
million.
of the 375th.
The 375th. The rodeo in Place du... We already talked about that last time. The rodeo in Place des Festivals. Like, that's not a Montreal thing.
But
I've
there's an
never even
obstacle
heard of
course
that.
now.
There's a lot of really cheesy stuff coming up for the 375th anniversary. The borough of Rivière-des-Prairies, Pointe-aux-Trembles has its own national anthem.
Yeah.
What?
They got $50,000 to come up with a national anthem.
That doesn't sound right.
It doesn't, but it's happening. And also the one thing too is actually we'll talk about this in the news roundup segment. But Denis Coderre is also going to be making some changes to the flag of Montreal. We'll talk about that right now.
News roundup.
So Montreal may have a new flag. The current flag of the city of Montreal represents the what were always known as the quote-unquote four founding communities: the French, the Scottish, the Irish, and the English. And now Mayor Denis Coderre wants to add some Mohawk imagery, some native imagery to the flag. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, we're just talking about Sanctuary City Motion. This is this is part of Montreal's 375th anniversary, but it's also an election year.
Well, okay, let's start off by saying he's not getting a lot of votes by doing something like this. There's a certain percentage of Indigenous voters in Montreal, but they're not going to swing the election.
There's also lefty progressives.
Right now?
There
Yes.
are, they're progressives, and some of us, including me, think it's an interesting idea, but I feel like this is something you got to tread very carefully here. You're dealing with a symbol of a city that's been around for a very, very long time. If you're going to redesign it, you've got to do it in a very respectful, very, I think, proper kind of way. Otherwise, you run the risk of ruining the symbol.
I don't think it's a bad idea to add a little bit of recognition of the native heritage of this city into the flag, to be honest. I think that's a positive move.
I think it's positive, but at the same time too, it kind of, you're taking a symbol of the natives, the colonized and the colonizers, and you're putting them into one flag. I mean, honestly, I think we are on stolen native land, and I think maybe the flag should only be a native symbol. I don't know if that might be.
Also, you got to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? I mean, is there some sort of pressure on him from Indigenous
I think the more the pressure's on
communities to-
pressures,
The more pressure, the better. I don't think it doesn't matter if if the pressure on him is causing causing an actual change. I think
But I
that
think-
means it's working.
No,
I
but
think-
but is
Left-
this just
lefty-
one idea that he's had, like the pit bull ban? Because I mean, this is a mayor who has a tendency to sort of fly by the seat of his pants.
I think the pressure is on maybe for more progressive voters that might vote Projet Montreal otherwise. And it's giving them more incentive to vote for him. He's doing a
I hope
thing like
they're
that.
not that stupid.
Yeah, but I do think for once a rare time, kudos to I have to say kudos to Denis Coderre for doing that, and also for the current Justin Trudeau government for trying to do something to fight Islamophobia. It's bylaw, not bylaw. It's members motion.
Motion, yeah.
103 against Islamophobia.
Yeah.
The government, it goes like this. The government should recognize the needs to, quote, quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear. The government should, quote, condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systemic racism and religious discrimination. The Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage should look at how the government could develop an approach, quote, approach to reducing or eliminating systemic racism and religious discrimination, including Islamophobia, and collect data to contextualize hate crime reports. And the committee should present its findings and recommendations to Parliament within 240 days. Now, is that controversial?
It seems to be, which I think is a little bit ridiculous, because I think if it's that controversial to say that we should publicly say, hey, racism is bad, then I think that just shows that we clearly have an issue.
Yeah.
If you're going to get into an uproar over racism is bad, then I think that means that we have an issue with racism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other proof of that is the fact, also the fact that the minister who sponsored it, her name is
Ikra Khalid.
and her Ikra Hali and Melanie Joly, the heritage minister, are getting hate mail over this, and
Yeah.
the fact that a mosque was shot up in Quebec City, and there's
That's
vandalism
right,
in
yeah.
mosques, also synagogues as well too.
Yeah, and I'd also like
Yeah.
to point out, for people that are trying to Black Lives Matter this entire thing, as you said,
All
in your
lives
article,
matter, the entire thing. Yeah, they're trying to.
they're trying to all lives matter this entire thing, and I think that's ridiculous because not only is Islamophobia an issue that needs to be addressed, but even in the motion they say Islamophobia and other forms of racism, and not even
Yeah.
making it specifically. I mean,
Yeah. The Conservative motion, which was supposed to be a counter motion, which was actually voted
which
down
failed
today,
today, yeah.
failed today,
Yeah.
was this tickle out the word Islamophobia at all. It's just
Yeah.
like, let's go after all religions. But it's an all lives matter approach. It's like, let's not talk about the Black lives being murdered. Let's say all lives matter. Just really, it's a cover for their
Okay.
for their racist base.
If I may, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so basically, the NDP voted for the Conservative motion today.
They did?
They did. They voted overwhelmingly for it, and the reason being, they thought it has some merit. Why not? Again,
Yeah.
what is so wrong with asking Parliament to condemn hatred and racism and discrimination in all of its forms, and to
But are they also going to vote for the Liberal
strike
motion?
a
So I
committee.
guess it's
Now they're
not
also going to
really
vote for the
vote.
Liberal motion. Now I think that's the right thing to do, and I think the Liberals voting against the Conservative motion is the wrong thing to do because you're politicizing this. You're turning it into no. This is political.
Well, the Conservative motion was
contest, and
Conservative
we're
motion
scoring
was
points.
created specifically as an alternative to the Liberal motion.
Right. No, I get it, but at the same time, if
I think we gotta
their
bring people
motion,
together a little bit. If they're saying no, like you don't want to polarize it. If they're trying to polarize it, and I think you're playing right into that if you're letting them polarize it.
no, but I mean, at the same time, like if it's a motion and it's not binding and it's not legislation, why not support all of these motions? They're all
I'm agreeing
positive.
with you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm the one who say I agree with you on that. I would necessarily say that the problem is that because the Conservative motion was created as a way to say we don't need the Liberal motion, we don't need to actually mention Islamophobia, and I think it's important to
Right.
But I think the
mention that.
Conservatives are I
Yeah.
was saying. I think the Conservatives are trying to make it into a polarizing motion. They're trying to say no, you can't by putting forward this motion against all racism.
Yeah.
It seems like they're trying to make it into all racism versus Islamophobia.
Right.
And I think he
Yeah.
has a point that I don't think we should let them make it into an either or situation. I think you're right that both should be voted for because it's not an
Yeah.
either or.
Yeah.
Yes, racism's bad, and yes, Islamophobia is also specifically bad.
Yeah.
And I think if you're gonna
Yeah.
make those two opposite sides,
Anti-Semitism
of the coin,
is
then you give them-
specifically bad too, and there was a motion I believe.
many
about that,
motions,
too.
actually.
Many
Yeah.
motions, all these things
Right.
are specifically bad, but I think if you let the Conservatives make it into a this versus this situation, then you legitimize that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, and the thing though is now that the Conservative motion didn't happen, this motion's still on the table, and there's a lot of there was rallies put on by by the Rebel. Kelly Leach was there talking about it's basically bigots that want to use their hate speech and feel they're being they're being trampled on by people trying to take away their right to give hate speech.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
they're saying it's going to bring in
How dare
Sharia
you
law.
take away my right to take
yeah,
other
I think-
people's rights.
I know. It's,
Also, let's remember the context. There's a conservative leadership race.
Yeah.
People
So-
are scoring points.
They're scoring points,
They're using this as a a wedge issue that they can hopefully gain some more votes to win the conservative leadership, because within the conservative leadership race there's some division, there's some tension over
and
this.
someone who was scoring points like crazy for his right wing views, but now is losing a lot of points because of something else he said is Milo Yiannopoulos. That's the reaction we all get when we hear him. If you don't know who he was on Bill Maher last week. He's basically he's an interesting figure. He's gay, openly gay,
Yep.
but he's incredibly transphobic,
Yep.
racist, incredibly Islamophobic, alt-right. He was an editor for Breitbart. But he got a book deal from Simon and Schuster. He was gonna headline the CPAC conference. They say was because a couple of days after he was on Bill Maher, a story came out of as they said from an old podcast he did on Joe Rogan, where they claimed he was he was supporting pedophilia, and since then he was denied. He was disinvited from the conservative conference. He
Lost his book deal.
And now Breitbart, 6 writers said they would leave if he didn't leave, and then eventually
He resigned, right?
He resigned,
or
yeah.
he was kicked out. We don't know.
He was
but anyway,
the way
he's
you
done.
resign when the president asks you to resign,
Yeah,
that
exactly,
kind of
exactly.
thing. So I mean, it looks like his career is kind of going down the tubes.
Yeah.
I think Milo's the worst, and anything that makes things worse for Milo is good by me. However, having listened to
The actual thing.
the actual clip in question, I hate to say this because Milo's the worst, but I think it may have been blown a little out of proportion.
Yeah, we listened to the clip just before we were actually ready to go crazy.
Yeah.
That he actually, but we don't. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I think we
I know,
all,
yeah.
like we're very happy that this is the man who is being persecuted right now.
Yeah.
And losing, all of this prestige and contracts and everything else. But at the same time, based on the comments that he made, it's sort of hard to see why this particular issue is the issue that, ruins his career.
Yeah, they're saying he is outright endorsing pedophilia. That isn't.
That is
No.
really that's
Entirely
really
what
not,
it sounded
seems
like.
to be a little bit of a jump from
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
actual
Seems like he was
clip.
making a really coarse, tasteless joke. Now, but the one thing though too is the fact is, all the other stuff wasn't a problem for Simon and Schuster.
Yeah. I mean, he literally said Donald Trump should kill all fat people or something. Like, now
he said
again,
that,
we have a sense of humor. I forget the box. We know that some of this stuff is done, just to get a laugh. But then Breitbart, it's a fountainhead of anti-Semitism, white nationalism. You name it, and all those things were okay. It seems.
People were rioting against him, and that
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah.
That was good for business.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a bridge too far. Supposedly.
I feel like maybe part of it is that
First of all, if he was endorsing pedophilia, obviously we'd be all like, "That's disgusting." That is a good reason to just get rid of him. But
it really doesn't seem like he was really endorsing pedophilia in the comments. I feel like maybe there's a lot of things that are problematic about Milo, and maybe a lot of people in charge of a lot of these major publications knew that he wasn't necessarily going to be good for their credibility, and maybe this was the one thing they could actively latch onto that all conservatives could say was bad.
Yeah, that's true.
it's the same way that, for example, Donald Trump, people like up until the. Now, obviously, it's since changed. He's actually became president, but up until the Access Hollywood tape came out, there were conservatives that could take all of his racism and had no problem with it, his Islamophobia. The moment he went after white women, that was a problem. But then again, I guess it wasn't too much.
voted for him.
It wasn't too much of a problem because he actually became president.
man.
And the funny thing in that one is the fact that just the interesting thing is if you realize that the other guy in that conversation, Billy Bush, lost his career
Oh, right. He's
over
done?
that. But,
oh, good.
But Donald Trump became
collateral
president.
damage. One of the Bushes loses his job.
But speaking about that, we're talking about credibility in mainstream media. Now all of a sudden, I trust the mainstream media again. With fake, when Donald Trump says CNN's fake news, I'm like, no, CNN's not fake news. Now, I was one of the people in the primaries really upset when they would cut away from Bernie Sanders' live speech to go to
Right.
Donald Trump's empty podium.
Right.
And when they called it the Clinton News Network, I'm like, fine, yeah, it probably is. But you know what? Now that the media is actually doing their job and actually
This has been a bit of a kick in the pants. I think the election of Donald Trump maybe alerted a lot of the people in the media to the fact that what they show really does matter and really does change things. All of this coverage that was being given to Donald Trump because he, sold news space had an actively damaging result.
Yeah.
So I think...
look, Clinton News Network, there's a kernel of truth. I mean, they had one of their pundits who was feeding Hillary questions.
Donna Brazile. Yeah.
Donna Brazile lost her job over this. So look, it's a little bit... It's too little, too late for some of these mainstream media outlets. I mean, they for years and years and years they were essentially under the thumb of corporate sponsors and advertisers, and also they were subordinating themselves to the Washington elites and the establishment politically in order to get those stories. Now they're doing their job finally, which is muckraking and asking tough questions.
That's
right?
that.
We don't want to. They lost so much credibility at this point.
I know, but now I'm trusting them again. Like I'm supporting them. It's great. I used to hate the mainstream media, supporting them, and also Saturday Night Live is good again.
Saturday Night Live is so much material right now.
Yeah.
Although I'm also a little bit hesitant to. I think we also don't want to fall into the trap of just believing everything that goes with the narrative that we already want. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the fact that. Any news source that we're going to say, it's a liberal news source, doesn't support Trump, therefore everything they say is truth, is also a bit of a dangerous mindset.
That's true, yeah. I mean, for example, like, there are things that you can still criticize, especially it's not just the Russians that he won the election. The Clinton team did mess up. Like,
big time.
Yeah. I mean, then again, there is an influence of the Russians, but I think that mainly has to do with oil. Actually,
it's always the Russians or the FBI, if you ask Hillary. You know? Come on.
But one thing,
grow up.
This all seems like the plot of some great Oscar-winning movie, and we're going to talk about the Academy Awards. But first, Hannah Besseau has this report.
It's Hollywood's biggest night, and sometimes it's the most controversial. The 89th Annual Academy Awards airs live from the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles tonight at 8:30. Last year, the event itself was mired in controversy. It's for the lack of diversity in its nominations. As the Oscars So White hashtag trended, host Chris Rock addressed the controversy in his opening monologue.
So, at some point, you get to take a picture with the president, and as they're setting up the picture, you get like a little moment with the president. I'm like, Mr. President, you see all these writers and producers and actors? They don't hire black people. And they're the nicest white people on earth. They're liberals. Cheese. That's right. Is Hollywood racist? You're damn right Hollywood's racist, but it ain't the racist that you've grown accustomed to. Hollywood is sorority racist. It's like, we like you, Rhonda, but you're not a Kappa.
This year, the nominations are significantly more diverse, with films like Hidden Figures, Fences, and Moonlight nominated in major categories alongside La La Land and Manchester by the Sea. While the show itself may be less of a lightning rod for protests, the Oscars are famous for winners and presenters making political speeches from the stage. Given the fact that Donald Trump is now president of the United States, it's quite possible that liberal Hollywood will make him a main subject of discussion.
And to kick off our Oscar segment, I'd just like to say that nobody on this panel, none of the three of us, have seen any of the nominated films for Best Picture this year, but we have all seen a movie that should be nominated for and win Best Picture, which is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Star Wars movies, although, as my brother put it, Star Wars already won the All the Money award, but it's not nominated for Best Picture, and which is a shame.
They were nominated for Best Visual Effects.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I assume they're going to win that.
Well, no? if they don't, then
there'll be riots. There will be riots in the streets.
There will be riots. Yeah, not just in Hollywood, but
I will start a riot in Montreal.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, good. All right.
Right over that.
What will we be doing on Monday?
Because we riot over important things like like student fees, but we also riot when the Habs win. Why don't we riot? Are you down for a riot? No. All right. Okay. Yeah, okay. Moving on to the Oscars. Now there are, Oscars did definitely fix their diversity problem this year. There's, it's not all white, although I have a funny feeling, from what people tell me, La La Land, which is basically a bunch of white people doing jazz. And it's a musical.
John Legend, though, eh?
Oh, he's
John
in it.
Legend's in there. as
He's
well.
in there. Okay, so it's not all
pretty
white.
self-congratulatory. I mean, like, I think it's pretty normal for Hollywood to give awards to movies that kind of romanticize the idea of trying to make it in Hollywood.
Yeah. And but they actually do make it in Hollywood show.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie. I do actually do want to see La La Land. And generally, I do like to go see the movie that wins Best Picture
Yeah.
if I haven't seen it already. Except
Yeah.
I really never wanted to see The Revenant. That didn't win last year, did it?
Leonardo DiCaprio won.
He won, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, just him fighting
finally.
a bear for 2 hours. I don't. That's doesn't really. Do
There was a lot of the talk about how his performance basically just involved like him just screaming a lot and just looking like he was in agony and
But
pain
he
the whole time.
just deserved an Oscar.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. He deserved to
Yeah.
get one at some
Yeah, it
point.
was a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
pretty much. Also, you say Hacksaw Ridge, though. Mel Gibson's
Maxwell
back,
Lynch's
right?
back. Yeah, which I find, is it a coincidence that Mel Gibson has been sort of rehabilitated, accepted again by Hollywood, and that we have a white supremacist president?
I think that it is pretty standard for people to forgive the massive flaws of entertainers who they find entertaining.
That's true. Yeah, and Casey
Yeah.
Affleck as well. There's a guy who has some history.
Oh yeah, sexual assault, right?
Sexual assault.
Chris
exactly.
Brown still has a
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like there's a bit of a double standard in Hollywood.
Yeah. There's you can get away with a lot.
Famous, it's okay.
If you're famous, lie low for a little while and then
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Woody Allen,
I'll find a
he
way to
still wins
redeem you.
honorary awards.
Yeah, but he has the decency not to turn up
not to shut
for
up.
the
Yeah.
Academy Awards because he knows he's
Roman
kind of
Polanski-
he's
yeah.
a little toxic.
Yeah, Roman Polanski went all the way to Paris, so he can't show up. He's not allowed back
that's
in the
right.
country.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of toxic people. Speaking about politics, though, if there's not so much controversy with the awards, you think there's going to be maybe some political speeches.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, there's something that always happens. Like there's the famous ones, like Marlon Brando
Yeah.
not accepting his award, sending someone to
Yeah.
accept it on his behalf. Meryl Streep caused controversy when Trump tweeted against what she said at the Golden Globes.
True.
Even Lady Gaga got a bit political at the Super Bowl. A lot of people didn't pick it up on. Who's going to get the most political at the Oscars?
Well, it won't be the. Okay, that's a good question. I think if Barry Jenkins, the director of Moonlight, wins,
He might, yeah.
I would see him bringing up the Trump administration in some way. There's an Iranian director who's already canceled his trip because of the
Of the
ban.
travel ban, yeah.
Yeah, in protest.
I heard the White Hats were part of a document. The white, what do you call it? The White Hats. The UN, the people in Syria fighting against the Taliban.
okay.
The white
okay.
casks. I can't remember.
Yeah, something
There's a
like
documentary
that.
on there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
because they're in Syria, I think they're Kurds or
can't.
something. They can't. But apparently
They
now
can't
they're
come.
now they have their visa, so now they're coming. So.
Okay. Well, okay. Anyway, I would say Barry Jenkins. Just to answer your question.
Okay. Do you think any? I don't think it's gonna be Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, he'll make some political jokes. He's the host. But.
No. Yeah.
I feel like if Emma Stone wins, is she nominated for Best Actress? for
She's
La La Land?
best actress. Yeah.
I feel like if she wins, she might say something.
Okay.
And I think that if let's see, so Mel Gibson might say something.
Denzel Washington, best actor.
You know what? I would
Yeah.
I
love
think
to
they
see
all-
a speech
they'll all
on
say
this by
something.
Mel Gibson.
By Mel Gibson,
I
yeah.
would love that.
Pro Trump.
Yeah,
He goes
probably.
pro Trump.
Oh man, just for entertainment
Oh
quality.
boy, that would be kind of. It's too soon in a way.
Denzel Washington, I could see. him
Denzel
saying
would say something.
Yeah.
Denzel would say
Denzel
something.
would
No
say
doubt. Ryan Gosling, he's Canadian. He should say something.
Yeah, but we all know how Canadians are when it comes to political posturing and trying not to stir the pot.
He plays a Trudeau.
Sorry, Canada. Love you, but y'all have some work to do.
Yeah, he may just. You're right. He may opt for the Trudeau approach to diplomacy, which is not my business to lecture you.
Yeah, it's all about. It is our business to make predictions, and we're going to make predictions following the community calendar.
Monday, February 27 from 9 to 12:30 a.m. at Casa del Popolo, Lung Butter will be performing alongside Mono No Aware and Pill. Doors open at 8:30, show starts at 9. Tuesday, February 28th from 5:30 to 7 at the Hall Building, the Center for Gender Advocacy is hosting an event called Fearing the Black Body, a panel on gender violence and resistance. The event starts at 5:30 in the Hall Building. Also, February 28th begins the Center for Gender Advocacy's Thick Skin event series. The event centers the topic of reflections on race, gender, and resistance and kicks off with the panel Fearing the Black Body. Thursday, March 2nd from 9 to 12 a.m. at Cabaret Tulip is Leif Volbeck, who's launching the album Twin Doors open at 8 and the show begins at 9. Tickets are $17 in advance or $20 at the door. Saturday, March 4, Tim Darcy of Montreal's Ought will be performing at Bar Le Ritz. The event is part of Blue Skies Turns Black. Doors open at 11 and the show begins at 11:30. Tickets are $10 in advance or $13 at the door.
And now, Oscar predictions.
Prediction!
Oscar edition!
Milo Yiannopoulos stages a protest about his unfair treatment by the media.
Limousine liberal Justin Trudeau turns up at the Oscars to work the red carpet and take a bunch of selfies.
Barack Obama, former U.S. president, makes an appearance at the Oscars.
Mel Gibson wins an Oscar and uses the opportunity to make a political speech in support of Trump.
Carrie Fisher will win the new category for Best CGI or Muppet for her cameo in the Star Wars movie Rogue One.
You know, I'd say too soon, but that's actually very classy. I think she should win that.
Yes.
And finally, Jimmy Kimmel, the host, will be funny, but nowhere near as funny as Chris Rock was last year. That's probably very easy prediction.
That's a safe one.
That's
a
a good
safe bet.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jason.
Coming up soon, you can read both of you on Forget the Box.
Hopefully.
Woo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different categories, different columns, and
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, and thank you guys, and we will catch you again for the next podcast in 2 weeks' time.
The FTB podcast by the Forget the Box Media Collective in Montreal was hosted by Jason C. McLean and produced by Hannah Besseau. For daily, unique, original content covering news, music, politics, arts, lifestyles, food, film, you name it, we've got it. Check out forgetthebox.ca.